welcome all of you. See, it was in May 2020, I took over as secretary. And I know the Charitable Trust has a long history, and I had heard quite a few ups and downs and how it was maneuvered and how it was taken over by DC. But I thought it is always better, I must be having a documented way of looking at the trust and from different stakeholders in the whole process. So I started the process sometime in May. For whatever reason, I couldn't complete it. But today I'm very happy that I could have most of you around. The way we decided on the panelists is like this. Nag was telling, let us not have more than 8 or 9. So we decided we'll have the directors who were mostly involved in the trust activities, the deans who were involved during the trust activities, our chairperson, the 2 secretaries, and Raman as a long-standing trustee and very active even till today. So these are the main reasons why we have these the 9 of us around here. And I requested Nag to help me in conducting this event. I thank Heritage Center will be the repository of all that we are talking today. And over to you, Nag, to take it forward.
Yeah, thanks, Alamilu. Good afternoon and welcome everyone to this recording of the oral history of the Alumni Charitable Trust. I also want to add to the thanks that Alamilu was saying, certainly the Alumni and Corporate Relations Office for making arrangements, and to Kannan Krishnamurthy, who's always our very reliable producer of such videos. It's great to have all of you on this panel. I think the way we will do this, I think the history of the Alumni Charitable Trust certainly involves many stakeholders, as Alamilu was saying. And we thought that perhaps the most efficient way to do this is to get at least a representative set of people together and ask them to talk about their experience with the Alumni Charitable Trust. And so it won't be a classical panel in the sense that you're not going to get questions from an audience. This is a recording, it's not live. And also, I don't know if the panelists are going to ask questions of each other. So I'll try to lead the conversation as much as possible. So let's get started. And as the song says, you know, the very best place to get started is at the beginning. So let's start with the beginning, the genesis of the Alumni Charitable Trust, which is about 30 years old or so by my reckoning. And I think I would like to start perhaps by asking 2 of our alumni.
Nag, for the record, I also have the trust deed I can share for the recording also.
Okay, but let's keep it light for the time being. But certainly will. By the way, the other thing is there are certainly people whom we couldn't accommodate in the panel. So what we are going to do is we are going to ask a few of them to record their memories of their association with the Alumni Charitable Trust, and these will be appended to the oral history when we do the final editing, and certainly documents can also be added at that time, particularly when you do a text transcription, I suppose. So DC and KK Raman are 2 alumni who have been involved with the Alumni Charitable Trust pretty much since its inception. So I thought it's only fitting that I start with them. And of course, DC, D. Chandrasekhar, has been a long-serving secretary of the Alumni Charitable Trust as well. And so I'd like to start with DC and ask him to tell us the how, why, when, where, and who started ACT. DC, over to you.
Thank you. I just did some homework and prepared a small note.
Okay.
So the trust was started at a time when Professor M.A. Parameswaran was the president of the IIT Madras Alumni Association. There was some difficulty for him to collect money for IIT. So he was trying to find out how we can collect money, and at that time, even the Alumni Association was not a registered body. So he was looking for an avenue to collect money for IIT, some small donation. So we got together and decided to form a trust. And Professor Parmeswaran did the consultation with the director and got the permission. And we started working on that. I quickly ran around, got the papers ready with the auditors, NC Rajagopal Company. And we formed
just BC, the director then was Professor Natarajan, right?
No, NVC Swami.
NVC Swami.
NVC Swami.
Yeah.
NVC Swami was the director. So with we formed the trust with the following trustees: NVC Swami, R. Kannan from the Accounts Department of IIT Madras, R. N. Shankaran, Accounts Department of IIT Madras, Professor Parmeswaran in his capacity as President IIT MA, Professor Muthukrishnan, K. Raman, D. Chandrasekhar, V. Varadarajan, and N. Ramakrishnan. So out of this, K. Raman, Chandrasekhar, and N. Ramakrishnan continue to be the trustees even today. In the first few years, the trust did not do much, and NVC Swami retired, and Mr. Natarajan took over. He took over as the chairman of the trust, and the two accounts persons also stepped down, and Professor Parameswaran was replaced by Professor Venkatesh. Hence, the revised board of trustees was made, which had Natarajan, Muthukrishnan, A. Venkatesh, K. Raman, Chandrasekhar, Varadarajan, and N. Ramakrishnan. And the secretarial activities of the trust was being looked after by the office of the Alumni Association itself, where we had one Mr. Venkatesan. So he was acting as office secretary, and somewhere there was some confusion that he became the secretary of the trust itself. So in the meeting that we had arranged to welcome Professor Anant as a director, we had a detailed discussion about this, and we reformed the trust. And in the meanwhile, Chris had joined. Chris must tell which year he joined. I don't have a record of that. So
I actually don't exactly remember. It must be 99 or 2000 when I joined.
Yes. Yeah, a little before 2001, you had joined. So Professor Anand decided not to be a member of the trust. So in 2001, we elected Chris as our chairperson and me as a secretary, and started continuing the trust. Then then it was decided to include the Dean Planning, Dean Alumni Relationship, Dean ICSR, and Dean Students also to be included in the trust. So the trust got expanded.
DC, 1 second. We didn't have Dean Alumni Relations then. You had Advisor Alumni.
Okay. Okay. Advisor Alumni. Yeah. So they all got into the trust. Then the existing 4 alumni continued. Little later, we inducted Raju Venkatraman and Gautam into the trust. And at the same time, we decided to invite the Mana president also into the trust. And then a few years later, Rajan Srikanth, Alamelu, and Preeti Agalyam were inducted into the trust. In the meanwhile, Professor Idi Chandi retired from IIT, but yet he was requested to continue in his capacity as an alumnus in the trust. During this period, various deans were exiting and entering depending on their tenure. I don't have a track of that. Then a little later, V. Shankar and Venkat Vishwanathan were inducted into the trust. It was agreed that the immediate, then the next decision was that the immediate past Dean IAR will also do one more term. That was the last decision that was taken on the trustees. With that, now we have 19 trustees in the trust. This is about the trustees.
DC, we also invited from the
MF.
president of North America.
Yeah. IIT Mana, I have already meant. I have not. I forgot to add that we decided to invite IIT Madras Foundation president.
Right.
Yeah, that now he is included, and we have 19 trustees in all,
including the Dean of Global Engagement, who also got added there.
Yeah. So we have 19 trustees. Now coming to operation, actually we didn't do anything in the first 4 years. And then in 1999, 2000, that was the time when Deshpande was giving us a huge donation for the construction of the hostel and all that. That time the trust got about 24,000 rupees, 24,000 US dollars through Mana. That was one major donation we collected through Mana. Then from the year 2000, we are under the purview of FCRA. That is the first time we ever had to do some correspondence with the Foreign Currency Regulation Act department. Then 1997-98, the total donation collected was just 1.93 lakhs. 98-99, it was 63,000. But we did not spend any of this money collected from 94, so we had accumulated 16 lakhs. So I have the figures for the various years, but nothing much to talk about till 2016-17. It crossed a crore. And then in 18-19, it became 2 crores, and in 19-20, it became 25 crores. Then about the history of fundraising, I have a little bit of information. Do I talk about it now or do I come later?
No, go ahead, DC, I think.
Okay. Now, fundraising, who is to do it was always a question, whether the Alumni Association or who else. Then it was suddenly decided that we will form a IIT Madras Research Foundation and raise money and get 100% tax exemption and raise money for IIT using the Research Foundation. So this was the first institution that was set up to raise funds. This was done when Professor Anant was the director. He got M.S. Swaminathan as the chairman of this trust. We had people like Kiran Mazumdar, Chris Seshai, Marty Subramaniam, all those people in the trust. We did all the registration, we did all the homework, went up to Delhi. At Delhi, we realized that unless we engage separate scientists, we cannot get exemption. Government was not interested in giving exemption when IIT professors were doing research. So the purpose of the trust was defeated. So we gave it up. We whatever money, and 4 alumni had donated 25 lakhs each for this trust. So the part of the money went to the sustainability project done by Dr. Professor Chella, and the balance money was used for raising money for IIT. We first recruited a person called Srinivas from ABN AMRO Bank. He's an alumnus. He used to work, and it was supervised by a group of us, Satya, myself, and Prakash Damodaran. We were the first 3 to start the Wednesday meetings. So we used to supervise his work. It was not going anywhere, and after a year's time, he left. And then we recruited Suresh, who also was not able to raise funds, who eventually became an office manager in the Alumni Relations Office. So in the year 2008 or 9, Professor Nagarajan became the Dean Alumni Relations, and the fundraising was discussed with him also. We initially recruited some people and started taking the help of Joe and another lady whom we had recruited. And we were consulting various people. We even came to a point where we wanted to engage an external agency to raise funds. But finally, we pitched upon the idea of this development office. And then we got the trustees to agree to it. We got IIT to agree to it. And we took off. And the rest is history. This is what I have to say.
Oh, thanks, DC.
Yeah.
I think you have made it very easy for all the others to follow you. So you've pretty much covered, I think, most of the relevant information about the evolution of the Alumni Charitable Trust. So Raman, you want to add your memories?
In the initial years, I was moving on a parallel track to what DC was doing without any knowledge of what DC was actually doing. That is, M.A. Parmeshwaran was the president of the Alumni Association. But the highest elected office bearer in Alumni Association was the secretary. So I happened to be a secretary from 90 to 92. So one day, for various activities, I used to interact with Professor NVC Swami, the director. And one day he called me. I remember immediately after the 1991 landmark Manmohan Singh budget. He said there's an issue. This budget, they have said that the government will meet all the estates of Madras for many other to start raising funds on its own. So some faculty were also involved. I don't remember the names. And I think by and large, I think there was some talk, I remember, about utilizing the plant and machine. A couple of decisions were taken. One, something about, expanding the scope of ICSR and all. At the same time, some of the faculty who have returned after post-graduation in the US, it was suggested that, it's a common practice in the US for the alumni to contribute to the universities where they studied as alma mater contribution. So why don't we raise money from alumni? So since I happen to be the secretary of the alumni trust, I got called in, and then Professor NVC Swami said, find out some way of raising money from alumni. Then it is at that point that I got into with Professor M.A. Parmeshwaran, and then DC and all. And then first we decided to form the trust. So the trust got formed, and thereafter we tried to do so many activities, and we went nowhere. Whenever we went to meet somebody, some of the alumni for raising funds, they said, IIT belongs to the government of India. I am paying my income tax. What should I contribute to IIT money over or above the tax? So we couldn't break this. But finally, in 96, 97, there was a committee consisting of all the 5 IITs. They had met in California somewhere and given a petition to the US government to give a representation to the US government to give alma mater grant as for income tax payers in the US. So that got approved. And then I think we got our first 1 lakh donation. Around 60,000 donation or something, which was mentioned by DC, I think in 96, 97. Thereafter, again, it came to an abrupt stop. Then thereafter, I think our tracks met together. And then from 1998, 99, 2000 onwards, more or less, the story is the same as outlined by DC. Fundraising wise, I think around, if I remember right, around 2010 or 11, we hit the first 10 crores. And then I think 2018 or 19, we hit around the first 100 crores. So after that, we have now made the 5-year plan and so on. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Raman. That was very helpful. So I think, Chris, you stepped in 2001. What is your recollection of the way why you joined the trust, and then how things went the first few years and how they are going now?
My close association started with the Distinguished Alumnus Award in 1998, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came, Desh Deshpande also got it in the same year, 1998. And we were together with Professor Nagarajan, and we were discussing, how fundraising should become a key activity for IIT. And Desh said that he will support from the US side, and I was asked to support from the Indian side. And initially, my offer was to plan my trips to the US to coincide with the director's trip to the US, so that we can meet the alumni together, especially in the Valley, in the Boston area, etc. And I still recollect my first meeting of the alumni along with Professor Nararajan, I think only once. And then afterwards, I think I've traveled once or twice with Professor Anand, actually. So that started.
Chris, you had gone once with Edie Chandi, Professor Edie Chandi.
Right. Yeah. But it started with Professor Nararajan. So that's when I started getting involved with IIT Madras in any way, any fashion. And we didn't make any headway. When we first met the alumni, we were not clear how to get the money from them, get the money to India. All of that was not very clear. And I hadn't realized that there was something called Alumni Charitable Trust. Only after we came back, then I was told that there is Alumni Charitable Trust and asked to join that, actually. So that's when I joined the Alumni Charitable Trust. But my focus was to, on one side, convince alumni to get involved, contribute, trust the institute to do justice to the funding, do justice to the money given. Don't be nitpicking, ask too many questions, because everybody has the best interest of the institution, and you need to just trust. We started also publishing projects that people can fund. So lots of things happened. Slowly we became better and better, more professional. Started, with different things, and of course, the deans were also then appointed to support this function in a formal way. So that's when I got involved, and my role, because of all the people involved with the charitable trust, the close connect with the institute, the support from the deans, was actually very easy, because very rarely we get into a situation where we don't agree on something. Everybody agrees very quickly, and we converge on a solution, a way to go forward. So it was actually quite easy, and we have progressed a lot, actually, in terms of how we have learned over the years to become more and more professional. And the last step was, of course, the foundation being formed in the US, where now we have a mechanism for formalizing that side with full-time employees, etc. So we have come a long way, and I think if I can if I can look back and feel good about something, it's about how we have become very professional in the way in which we go about fundraising, how we were able to win the trust of the alumni, and slowly I think we are reaching a stage where alumni is now feeling that they need to contribute, that they just like in the US they contribute to their alumni in the US. I think they are feeling obligated now to contribute to IIT Madras. So that's been my focus, and I think we've reached a stage where I think we can look back and say that that transformation is almost there, but we need to sustain it. And now other people are able to do this much better than in the previous years, or what even I thought of actually.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Chris. And thanks also for continuing to volunteer time with the Alumni Charitable Trust, and of course all the other various activities.
No, with the DC being there with full support from the directors, the deans, as I said, and all the people there, have only one focus, right? Which is how do we help IIT Madras, and how do we be the bridge between alumni and the institute? I think so. It was very easy. I didn't have to do much.
So, Professor Anant, did your association with the Alumni Charitable Trust start only after you took over as director, or did you have some interactions even earlier?
No, I think only after I became director. I was involved informally because Natarajan and I were good friends.
Yeah.
So sometimes he would involve me. Even as director, I don't have much to say in addition to what all the others have already said. And essentially, DC and you were the guiding people there at that time, because in fact, Nagarajan used to say, "We'll call you, you come and speak. I'll take the plate around and ask for money." And it really worked out very well. DC was always there with, he knew the rules and this thing also very well. So he knew what would be permitted, what would not be permitted. There was a small discussion about tax. If you contribute in the US, you get a tax exemption. But if you contributed in India to the charitable trust, I think you get less deduction in tax. I think DC worked that out to some extent. I think he said, if locally you're making a contribution, give it directly to IIT. And otherwise, I think you give it to the trust as well. So that's all I have to add. Primarily, what we needed was warmth. And I think we achieved that by visiting the alumni often enough. We also went to the chapters of various cities in India also. And we kept them completely informed about what we were doing. That seemed to make a difference. I think that was slowly like Chris said, the trust sort of built up. And I think you also contributed by making this spending of the money very transparent. What they wanted it for, and it was immediately on the. In fact, we keep joking about Nag replying faster by email than by any other. So don't call him, you won't get us to reply you. You send him an email and you'll get a reply immediately. I think those things helped. And overall, I think done well. Of course, the money was small when I was director. It has increased considerably. I think in Bhaskar's time, the money was much more. I think we can look forward to even more collections in the next 10 years.
Yeah, thanks, Professor Anand. So I think, Professor Bhaskar, by the time you took over as director, of course, the trust was well established. And I think probably a few years after you took over as director, the development office was started under the Alumni Charitable Trust. And of course, many things happened in the US. IIT Mana ceded fundraising responsibility to the IIT Madras Foundation, and the foundation got established. And so those were interesting times. I think probably during your tenure, the trust probably went through a fairly significant evolution. What is your view of, what view did you have of the trust when you first took over as a director, and what view did you have by the time you completed your terms?
Yeah. So I think I got associated with trust and other alumni related activities even when I was a dean of planning.
Right.
Because Professor Anant, I think, had brought alumni affairs organizationally under the dean of planning. So I used to be involved. There was no dean of alumni affairs at that time.
Right.
There was a professor in charge of alumni affairs, and then advisor alumni affairs, and sort of in the organizational chart that used to be in the dean planning's purview. So I was therefore involved, and as just Professor Anand just mentioned, I think the role of the charitable trust at that time was, see, money could have always, it was always possible to donate money to IIT directly, especially for Indians. And we've been receiving funds like that over, many years, decades. But that is some sort of, it's a little, I mean, if you want to get an analogy, it's like giving to a temple or something. Basically, the institution will use the money the best way it sees fit. Of course, you can also make an endowment, and people have made endowments for prizes also for a long time. But if the Alumni Charitable Trust was probably the first vehicle, instrument that we created for alumni in India to be actively engaged along with the institute. There's the MANA, IIT MANA, which is the sort of organization in North America, which tried to do the same thing. And these were the two that were there when I became director. And there's Alumni Association was also there. IIT Madras Alumni Association was also there, I think. But initially I was confused. What is the role of the trust? What's the role of the association? So then it became a little clearer that the association's job is actually to cater to the alumni's interests and needs, not only in engaging with the institute, but even as a network amongst themselves. Whereas the charitable trust's role is primarily to engage in activities where the alumni are engaged in some form directly, either contributing to the institute financially or taking part in activities as IIT Madras alumni using their charitable funds on activities that are probably even a little more broader, not necessarily only within IIT Madras. So this clarity came, and then we said, okay, let's build on these things. Whenever we want to do something, receive funds which somebody wants to donate, not necessarily directly to the institute, receive the funds. Very often these funds came from abroad, from alumni abroad. And a lot of it would be transferred to the institute for the purpose the alumnus gave it for. But some of it would also be spent out of the trust for activities that the alumnus, the donor wanted, which were better executed from the trust, not than it could have been done, let's say, if the money was transferred to the institute. So even recently, for example, when we received some money for COVID relief, whatever COVID relief was meant for IIT was transferred to IIT, but there was also alumni donations for providing COVID relief to the city of Chennai and even to some other neighboring states. That was done directly out of the trust. So these kinds of things have been done. As we started scaling up our fundraising activities in the institute, we realized that we would benefit by having a professional organization similar to what many universities in other countries have, to actually do the fundraising, not rely only on volunteer activity of either the alumni or some faculty or some other students and others. So we decided we'll actually hire professionals whose job would be to approach donors, understand their interests, what they want to donate for, complete the entire chain and receive the money, execute it, make sure the donor is satisfied, and so on and so forth. Roughly, this is called, very often this is called a development office, a development of the institute being the underlying assumption. And this development office we wanted to start in the institute, but we wanted to do it. It was not clear that this would be possible within the IIT institute's organization, because there was no such thing sanctioned in some sense by MHRD. All our positions within IIT are all positions that are approved by MHRD, faculty positions, staff positions, and so on. So it was not clear. Not that we couldn't do it, but it was not clear how well we could do it. Secondly, the kind of compensation structure you would want to have for such personnel, which would be performance related, is something we don't have in the IIT system. All salaries here are fixed. So we felt that the development office role being primarily to raise funds for IIT Madras would be something would be squarely within the scope of the Alumni Charitable Trust's objectives, because Alumni Charitable Trust, one of its main objectives was to raise funds and contribute to IIT Madras. So whatever it does towards doing that would be very much within the scope. So we actually set up the development office within the trust, and we received funds for this mainly from our foreign donors. Some of the funds we received from foreign donors was for nurturing the goose that laid the golden egg, for nurturing the development office, and the trust of course monitored its performance and made sure that it always gave, the office always ended up giving back more to the institute than was spent on the office by the alumni. So this has gone on for a few years. It has gone on very well, and it still continues that way. But now, what has happened is, partly I would even say we can take the credit for this, partly due to our success, IIT Madras success in fundraising, and partly because many other institutes also wanted to, did their own homework and wanted to go down similar paths. The ministry has actually approved now, formally, issued guidelines for setting up development offices, creation of trusts, and has given some fair amount of freedom to each institute to do it the way they like. They can even set up a Section 8 company if they want. So it turns out that whatever they've issued guidelines for is what we're already doing. We already had a trust, and we could, and the trust could raise money, could run a development office, and so on. But now they even allowed the institute to, through a process by approval of its board and so on, to actually transfer money to the trust for the purpose of running the development office. So in some sense, it's now much more of what you might say, it's now something that the government expects us to do in some sense, not something we were doing creatively on our own. So that's where we are now. So the trust is definitely, right in the middle of our fundraising and development office activities. And there are some changes that have come in the financial rules of the government. It's now not possible for the trust to receive foreign money and transfer it to IIT Madras. The FCRA Act doesn't allow that. So funds that are transferred from abroad to which are meant for IIT Madras will now come directly to IIT Madras. Anyway, it didn't matter. The trust used to do that anyway, and that's only a procedural change. But the trust will continue to play a role in running the development office, and I would say, taking up activities that are better handled, which alumni, which the institute, the trustees feel is worth doing, and which are aligned with its the stated objectives of the trust. And since there are so many representatives of the institute also on the trust, I think, which you can safely assume that it's also what the institute wants to be done, but which is better executed by funds that the trust receives than necessarily funds that the institute receives. So those kind of activities, like for example, there is PALS. PALS is an activity where alumni it's grown over the years. Alumni are spending not more than the money, is the time and energy they are spending working with IIT Madras in reaching out to other institutions, other engineering colleges and institutions in the mostly right now in Tamil Nadu and some neighboring states, but there's no reason it can't grow countrywide. PALS is not only IIT Madras, it could be any alumni. And government also wants the institute to do this. The whole business of interacting with these colleges, receiving some very modest sums of money from them as a sign of their interest and engagement, plus receiving donor funds from even companies and so on. And then more than that, coordinating and managing the time and energy that various alumni were working in various companies and various other positions are willing to give to essentially provide really good really good inputs to students from other colleges with the help of IIT faculty, IIT labs, IIT students, and so on. And this has gone on very well and it's been growing. And it's an activity that certainly IIT Madras is not, is not the right organization to take up this activity. We can participate in these activities through our volunteer work, through our throwing open our labs and providing summer internships and so on. But we need an organization like the trust to actually spearhead this. So I think the trust has evolved into something that now is one main role is actually development of, running the development office, and it will grow. It started as fundraising, but I think development office can mean many things. The other thing is to take up activities that are very meaningful to alumni and to the institute, which are better executed, outreach activities primarily, which are better executed from the trust rather than from the institute. Working, of course, jointly with the institute. So I would say that's where we are right now.
Yeah, thanks, Professor Bhaskar, for pretty much bringing us up to date on the Alumni Charitable Trust and its role in terms of working with the institute.
I first met DC around the time of our Pearl reunion. We, the class of 1978, chose water as the theme of our reunion. And in this regard, we raised money to fund water-related projects. We thought it would be a good idea to get tax exemption for these donations. And so I approached DC, who was very willing to help us. Sometime later, I was very pleasantly surprised to receive a request from DC to make me a trustee of Alumni Charitable Trust. He sent me a bunch of information, email of course, containing the memorandum, bylaws, articles of association. I went through all of that and pondered for a few days and asked myself the question, is there any reason why you should not become a trustee? And I was not able to think of anything, and so I joined. Soon I realized that ACT is not your typical charitable trust. It's a partner. It's a partner with IIT Madras, helping IIT to achieve its objectives. There are numerous instances whereby IIT, the charitable trust, has helped people on compassionate grounds, which would have been a little difficult for IIT Madras to achieve.
Satya, as you were mentioning, you were faculty in charge of alumni affairs when the trust really started to find its feet. What are your recollections of working with the institute and your association with the with the trust and your association with the trust?
Yeah, thanks, Nag. See, actually, I started getting pulled into this alumni activities within a couple of years of joining IIT as faculty member. In '93, I think I was drafted into the Alumni Association as editor of Alma Mater for a few years. Then I got in as an executive committee member, and I think I was also a treasurer for a few years, and so on. But my role from the institute side on alumni activities was advisor alumni affairs in 2004. Professor Anand had called me one day and said, take over this office. So what had happened is, having seen the activities from the Alumni Association side also, I think the institute found towards the end of 98, 99, 2000 period, there's too much of noise from the Alumni Association in dealing with some of these activities. You have people throwing allegations and pulling things in different sides and so on. And because earlier the institute was dependent on the Alumni Association for many of these, was hoping the Alumni Association will do this. And then I think, I'm not sure whether it's Professor Natarajan or Professor Anand who took the decision of forming this Office of Alumni Affairs to look at the alumni relations from an institute's perspective. Professor Natarajan, Professor Anand, do you recall whether you started it or Professor Natarajan started it?
I think I did.
Although,
although there was talk of it even when Natarajan was director.
Yeah. So I think this was started around 2001 or so, the Office of Alumni Affairs, with Professor T. Sundarajan as the first advisor alumni affairs for a couple of years. Then G. Sundarajan who was also the president of the Alumni Association, because those days the president is appointed by the director. Before we let go, the treasurer used to be appointed by the director, the president used to be appointed. That's why I think I became treasurer. Yeah, the director had asked me to take over treasurer of the Alumni Association. And at some stage, we took a decision, the association has to be kept separately, and the institute let go the president's position and the treasurer's position also. So Professor T. Sundarajan ran it for a couple of years. Then G. Sundarajan, he unfortunately passed away. Then L.S. Ganesh, I think, ran it for about a year or less than that. And the activities were just finding their feet. Hardly anything was happening. In 2004, Professor Natarajan appointed me as Advisor Alumni Affairs. The very next week, I took the flight and went to Bangalore to meet Chris to get his inputs on where should we go. And Chris, in his typical details, that he went to the board and came up and said we should raise 100 crores in the next 4 years or 5 years. And he worked out on the board how we should raise this money. He brought in a couple of alumni in Infosys also to brainstorm on this. And then I came back and started working on it. I think that was the real first initiative where we started thinking big, because till then it was just a trickle coming here and there. Then what happened was, I used to go for this Silver Jubilee events and the alumni get-togethers. And Professor Anant very strongly believed that the first thing we need to bring is the warmth with the alumni. Sometimes when the alumni come, do they feel that they wanted in the institute? And he strongly believed that once we get that warmth and their and all that, and if alumni are ready to give time to open doors for us, so first step was to get that warmth and welcoming of the alumni into the institute. So I used to go for this Silver Jubilee events and all that, where we used to talk about, they will say we're going to raise 2 crores or 1 crore or whatever it is. And Professor Anand, initial meetings I went and I was sitting in the audience, and Professor Anand will come and say that, we need all your support, all those things. Money is not the first priority. We have government supporting us and so on. So I went to Prasanant and said, Prasanant, please don't keep telling me. I was sitting in the audience and people would say, then why are we talking about fundraising? Prasanant is saying money. Because his objective was to initially not ask money, but get them engaged with the institute very properly. So I went to Prasanant and said, please stop saying that, the institute has enough money or all that. And anyway, I think that's how we started off. And then we talked about creating this IIT Madras Success Foundation, and the advisor Prasanant and DC and I worked on that quite a bit. In fact, went to Delhi. Prasanant also spoke to Finance Minister Chithambaram at that time a couple of times to get clearances and so on. But then it was clear that this is not going to work out, and we decided to drop it. By the time, I think it took us to set up this office. Before that, it was just the Advisor Alumni Affairs with maybe one person. So we started hiring people, with DC's support. And most important thing is how to engage with MANA, IIT Madras Alumni Association North America. And IIT MANA was also not very well organized. Alumni would try to reach out to IIT MANA, and sometimes they would not get receipts on time and so on. And we tried to tell IIT MANA, we will provide the back office support here. It's much cheaper for us to provide the back office, but they wanted to do it their way. In fact, I went twice when I was in US. I had meetings with the IIT MANA people to convince them to, because we felt that a lot of the fundraising is, not getting the traction in US because they didn't have the bandwidth, because they were all working on a volunteer basis. But anyway, so many of these foundations were started off, and by the time I think I finished my term in 2009, we got to raising nearly 5 crores or so a year. Okay, so starting from a few lakhs here and there. So the main challenge, and the other thing is, I think we never knew how to ask. And the attitude among faculty and many of our senior administrators was people give it out of charity. They feel like this, saying they will come and give it out of charity, and they're not expecting recognition or anything like that, and so on. I think we had it took us nearly a decade to get over that mindset among most of our faculty and so on. For example, I think the first successful selling of a project was for the 1981 batch. I had written to the deans and the HODs saying that you need to give me ideas on which I can go and sell to raise funds. And the only person who responded very positively was Idi Chandi. He had gone to MIT and seen the Makers Lab there and so on. And he gave this idea, why don't we raise money for this? So Nag's batch, 81 batch, I'd gone and sold this idea. I'd gone to Mahabalipuram, and they gave 81 batch, 81 lakhs to start CFI. So these are some of the things that really required a lot of sensitization of faculty, that we should do this, even our administrators. And I think after that, and once Nag came in, then the position got upgraded to a dean's position, and the office really took off, because even DC and I started talking about development office at that time itself, because we said it's not just the alumni we're going to be going after. We need to go after industry, we need to go after well-wishers of the institute, and if you have a complete an alumni tag to it, maybe it gets limited in terms of how we do the fundraising. And the other thing is the charitable trust gives, as already pointed out, where, for example, KV or Velacheri schools and all that, some of the social kind of activities that we had to root funds, charitable trust gave us that avenue to do that. And of course, it really helped that Chris and Desh made some major contributions at the beginning. I think that set really benchmark for other people to start stepping in, and I felt that given their contribution and all that, we should give recognition to them in the institute. And the last thing I could do before I stepped down was to get the two, the computer center and the communications building named after their whoever they wanted to name. So these are all, before that, when I went and talked to some of the people, they said, no, they're just giving it out. They said, we need not do all that. I said, it's not that they are asking for it. I think from the institute side, we should do it, because that helps in raising other funds. Because when they come and see here that this has happened, that helps us to raise funds. I'm sure I don't think they expect it to be this thing, but I think we have an obligation. Now, this kind of mindset change took some time, almost a decade to, at least it took me 5 years to get some of the people to start accepting that we should be doing these things. After that, Nag really took it to a different level, and Mahesh is taking it to a different level. I think they've done a fantastic job in doing this, and it helps that we have people like Almelu, KK Raman, DC from the beginning, from the scratch. They've been there, and all of them have been great supporters of the institute. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Satya. I think that the Desh matching campaign was one of the first major fundraising exercises, right?
Yeah. Desh matching campaign that helped us really raise a lot. We couldn't get 100% of what he promised, but we managed about 80%. I think.
Mm. Yeah. So that really gave us a kickstart as far as.
Yeah, that gave a big fillip. Yeah.
So I think the Alumni Charitable Trust, I think from what I'm hearing, was well ahead of its time. And now many other institutions are starting to copy the model. And so how about IIT Tirupati? Have you started your development office yet? Or?
Yeah, we've not formally started the office, because we have alumni, just 3 batches have gone out. But we have the Dean of International Affairs and Alumni, and they're setting up all this framework now.
Yeah. So in 2009 February, Satya recruited me as the professor in charge of Office of Alumni Affairs. This was just after the 2008 Pan IIT alumni meet.
Well, I found out that I was already there 5 years. We did the same, and Anant. Then I realized I have to find a successor myself to get myself out. I went to Prasanant and was like, here's a guy who's much better than me. Please hand it over to him.
Yeah, I remember that 1-minute conversation in front of ICSR building. Satya asked me whether I'd like to do it. I said, sure. And then I went and met with Professor Anant and got started. So, of course, when I took over, it was still the Office of Alumni Affairs with a professor in charge, and that continued till 2012. In 2012, we combined the offices of International Relations and Office of Alumni Affairs and made it into a dean-level office. And it was Dean of International and Alumni Relations. That was how the office was christened. Of course, more recently, that Dean's office has been, again, split into two. So now we have Dean for Alumni and Corporate Relations and a Dean for Global Engagement. Again, all signs of growth and success and so on. So I think, of course, when I took over, Satya had already provided a solid platform, and we had this group of dedicated alumni that were always willing to give time and money. And so my job was really, as a good chemical engineer, my job was to scale up. That's one thing that you have trained very well in our curriculum. So I think my efforts from day one were to tap into this vast resource that we had of alumni and other well-wishers. And following Professor Anand's philosophy, my first 2 years, maybe 3, was really spent on, again, upgrading our communications and our relations with our alumni. So we had a lot of chapter meetings. I think every year we had 5 or 6 that I would take the director to, and we started visiting abroad regularly to meet with alumni there. And communications, that's something I've always taken very seriously. And as Professor Anand was again mentioning earlier, email communications to me were very, very important because it shows that you're responsive. So I never let an email sit for more than 24 hours without getting answered. And I think a lot of that did help in terms of, it was very time consuming, but I think it was time well spent. And I think we were really able to achieve a very personal connect with many alumni. And the reunions also started to happen regularly, not just the silver, but even the 10-year tin reunion and the pearl and the coral and the ruby. And of course, the first golden reunion also happened in, when was that? 2012 or 2013 was the first 50th reunion. And I think all of that, again, helped in both aspects, in terms of building a tighter affinity to the Institute and in terms of scaling up the fundraising. I think the Alumni Charitable Trust at that time was a very, very important ally in all these efforts. Organizationally, of course, it had a role to play in terms of receiving funds, disbursing funds, and keeping track of funds received, funds deployed, reporting back. All of that, I think, was taken care of to a very large extent by the Alumni Charitable Trust office and the tight ship that DC was running. But I think more importantly, it gave us a vehicle to locate the development office when we first thought of it. The fundraising was increasing by leaps and bounds, and we were at a stage where we felt that instead of volunteers driving it, including myself, as a faculty, I can only volunteer part of my time. We thought that if we had full-time people doing this, the success would only be compounded. So the development office was started with Subbu, Sujata, and Joe as the primary office people. And again, it was quite spectacularly successful. And we were able to maintain a fairly high rate of growth, which of course Mahesh has been sustaining and building on since he took over. One thing that did happen during my tenure is that the US situation got much better crystallized and resolved. People like Seshan Ramohan, especially in the US, took the lead in bringing the foundation into existence. We realized that, again, MANA trying to do both alumni networking as well as fundraising was not the ideal model, and that we needed a dedicated team to look at fundraising in the US. Although initially, even the foundation was not really in a fundraising mode. They were also in a fund collection and forwarding mode. They did have a few full-time employees, but mostly to do the accounting and running the back office and so on. And but it was a departure from what it was before, and IIT Mana eventually ceded fundraising responsibilities to the foundation, although we had a few years where things were going back and forth. Mana wanted to retain some of that, and but eventually I think all agreed on the wisdom of having a separate fundraising entity in the US. And the foundation now, of course, is well entrenched, and US-based alumni are very familiar with it and are happy to direct their donations through the foundation. And in fact, the US Foundation is now serving as the model for other countries as well. We have a Canada Foundation that's also taken off quite well, with Venkatesh Mannar being the driving force there. And there is also a foundation that is functioning in the US to some extent, although it's not an IIT Madras Foundation. It's kind of a UK IIT foundation. And of course, there is an effort to start something similar in Singapore as well. And I certainly see that many of these offices that are being set up now are using the already successful model that we had originated and then transferred over to the US, of course, with local adaptations as needed. So I think that we always had, I think, a very excellent and also very clear relations between the Institute, the Alumni Charitable Trust, the Dean's Office at IIT Madras, IIT Mana, and the IIT Madras Foundation. By the time my terms ended as Dean. And of course, since then, I believe Mahesh has taken efforts to formalize the relationship through agreements and so on. I'm sure he will talk to that when I call on him next. So I do think that the Alumni Charitable Trust has played a significant role, and I think if we say that IIT Madras is ahead of all other academic institutions in India in fundraising, I think the existence of the Alumni Charitable Trust for several decades now is certainly a major factor, and it's something that other institutions are only learning to do as of now. So hopefully we can take advantage of this divide and push forward with our agenda. So with that, I'll now call upon Mahesh. Yeah.
I think it was during your tenure that we sorted out the differences between Mana, and brought some stability in all the relationships, and it also gave us a lot of flexibility. The money could be channeled, through any of these organizations. There was no competition. Everybody worked together. I think that happened during your tenure.
Yeah, I have good memories of how that started out and how it finally ended up. I should also mention that DC had briefly mentioned this Wednesday meetings that started when I think when he was working with Satya. That is another activity that we were able to scale up to a significant extent. We were able to get some 8 to 10 alumni to come every Wednesday of every week to the campus and review our fundraising activities and help not only operationally, but also strategically in terms of planning campaigns and even monitoring campaigns. And I think that again is a major differentiator between IIT Madras and virtually any other institution. And in the US also, they would love to be able to do something like that, where they can bring people together to sit around the table. Of course, not during COVID times, but otherwise. That again, I think we were very fortunate that many of the same alumni were also playing key roles in the Alumni Charitable Trust. So there was not a lot of lack of familiarity that we had to deal with. I think the same activists were active on all fronts, but they were able to play different roles depending on the setting. And I think that again helped us in terms of having a very coherent and convergent fundraising strategy, which is still one of our biggest assets. So Mahesh, what is your take on where we are with the trust today, and what do you see happening going forward? Professor Bhaskar already touched upon some of the major changes that are happening and that are likely to happen. What is your vision for the trust?
I'm the youngest on this panel, and I'm really not one that should be doing an oral history recording, but what I can certainly talk about is where we are and what potential this holds. I inherited a very robust, extremely powerful alumni relations office from thanks to Satya and then Nag, who did all the spade work. I'll crystallize what I mean by I'll just crystallize what I inherited into 3 bullets. The dean's LinkedIn profile was connected to about 23,000 alumni, first connected. We had a Salesforce database of about 30,000 emails, of which at least 28,000 were good emails the day I inherited. And we had a good foundation, well-differentiated offices that sort of were all set up and firing on all cylinders. I think this is a setup that any dean would love to inherit. And I want to first start by thanking the group of people that put their sweat and blood to create this network that I inherited. As far as the trust is concerned, my view of the trust has been that it is a repository of all of this knowledge that went into creating these assets for IIT Madras. Whether it is DC, Raman, or Ram, or even Venkat Vishwanathan, who joined most recently. By the way, Venkat Vishwanathan is the most powerful alumnus as far as LinkedIn is concerned, next to the dean. So when you have someone like that on the trust, he really has visibility of 15, 20,000 alumni real time. So people like that being on the trustee board, people like Shankar, I'm talking of the more recent joinees, it brings a wealth of experience of what has worked, what has been tried, what has partially worked, and what are some ideas that were sort of bounced around but didn't get around to find implementation level thinking. So it gives me a solid footing, and more importantly, a lot of the people on the trustee board are my sounding boards as well. Whenever I find an idea that I want to sort of take forward, they are my first sounding boards, and they've all been great assets. So having an organization like the Alumni Charitable Trust, right adjacent to IIT Madras, well connected, organizationally connected to IIT Madras through all the ex officio deans that are trustees, is actually an asset that every educational institution should have. Like Professor Bhaskar said, it gives us the freedom to execute all of those activities that IIT should be doing but cannot do for whatever reason. And I think I see the trust as that asset that gives us that flexibility. Satya mentioned 5 crores fundraising in about 2004, and Nag talked of scaling up, and it certainly went from 5 to almost 75 crores. And for us to now go from it took 15 years to go from, let's say, 5 to 50 crores, or maybe 12 years to go from 5 to 50 crores. I think it should take the same 12 years to go from 50 to 500 crores. And we are on that growth trajectory. It gives me a lot of confidence when I talk to either an alumni or even a non-alumni donor, just to sort of present the case that we have this sort of a volume of fundraising happening and this sort of a robust two-way alumni institute, alumni alma mater relationship. Several alumni come back and become repeat donors at the larger level. At the retail level, there is still some work to do, but at the HNI level, we have exceptionally high fraction of repeat donations. which is always a good indication of both donor satisfaction and good use of the money. I think like someone mentioned, having transparency in the system has always been a challenge. In the last 3 years, my priorities have been to sort of organizationally tie up all of these different entities and clear up the roles of each of those players, whether it is a MANA, or the foundation, trust, and IIT Madras. All of these organizations now have cross-pollinated board memberships, ex officio. So there is visibility of what each organization is thinking and doing strategically. So we can all be aligned towards one goal, which is to help IIT Madras become a globally relevant and globally leading institution. The last point I want to wrap up on, thanks to all of this volume of activity, whether it is alumni relations, this sort of back and forth communication, or alumni fundraising, as well as CSR, which is now a big arm of our fundraising, which started out through alumni giving through their companies, but it has now sort of grown a pair of legs of its own and is able to run on its own 2 feet. All of these fundraising activities have now reached a level of professionalism where we have a team just doing donor stewardship, a team just doing database management, a team of almost 9 only doing fundraising, and another team of 5 or 6 providing all the back office web support needed to make all of these emailing and all of this communication happen. So, but we are not happy with it. We want to grow this to an office of, my vision is to have an office of about 100 people in the next 5 years, with so all the basic functions of a professionally run development office being taken care of. I'll stop here. I'll just wrap up by saying, thanks to all of this, for the first time, at least in my tenure here, I had a chance to present a proposal of $100 million ask to a donor yesterday. And I was able to do it only because of the courage that the last 15, 20 years of all of these activities got us to. And I want to thank all of you for that, and I'll stop there.
Thanks, Mahesh, and good luck with the 100 million. So I've kept the best for last. Alamelu, of course, has very recently taken over as the secretary of the Alumni Charitable Trust, but she has been a very involved alumna now for many years. And Professor Bhaskar was mentioning PALS. That's another activity that I know that she has been intimately involved with. So Alamelu, what's been your experience taking over the trust, and what do you see for yourself going forward into the future?
I am involved with IITM activities right from 2002, 2003, ever since my son joined the institute. And I became the secretary, then involved in Pan IIT, and with DC around here. I was traveling quite often with him to the institute for our Pan IIT meetings and all, and have heard a lot of details he used to tell about the charitable trust and the activities and all. And in fact, honestly speaking, those card drives gave a lot more information about the activities than actually the typical meetings I had with MAA. So ultimately, it is not meeting across the table, but it is an informal chat, which gives you a lot more insight into how things are happening. So as far as coming to the story of ACT, Alumni Charitable Trust, it was sometime in 2013-14, DC had asked me to be part of the charitable trust meeting physically happening at ICS's second floor. And there my ACT was attended based on DC's request, contributed wherever I can, and thanked IITM for the opportunity given to contribute. So there ended all my involvement. And of course, as a volunteer, whenever you start involving, we will give about 100%. But in 2020 May, when DC asked me to take over as a secretaryship, the ACT took a totally different name. It is adherence, compliance, leading to a lot of table work. Continuous adherence, compliance, and table work. And I used a strategy. ACT allowed my colleagues to train me and teach me. I must thank DC, Raman, Mahesh, Shankar, Venkat, Gautam, all the trustees in helping me to take forward the work, the legacy that DC has left with me. And it was a huge shoe that I had to fit into. And he had been of enormous support to me. So it is 2 years since, not 1.5 years since I have taken over the trust. And the way I look at trust is more towards adherence component of the trust and making things done than strategically thinking how to take it forward, because I must feel comfortable in this role before I take any additional activities. Particularly last couple of years had been slight tough because of COVID, the aggressive targets, the increasing competition from other IITs, and also the new FCRA rules. But I must thank the institute and the dean and all others in bringing a smooth way of handling things in the days to come. So currently we have to find how exactly we have to take it forward for the next 10 years. If I have to plan for the next 10 years, its role, which will suit its activity and status over the period, and which will suit also the aspirations and the outlook of the alumni who form the main component of the trust. So in this way, in this scenario, my approach will be the ACT should now be address challenges together. The together is with alma mater as the prime purpose, alumni as the backbone, and charity as its underlying principle. So in this way, I will tell that without ensuring the charitable purpose is in its activities, and it is for the requirement of our umbilical cord, that is IITM, our activities have to be drafted for the next few years and see to take it forward is how I will be looking at the trust in the next coming years.
Thanks, Alamilu. Okay, I think we have pretty much gone around once and heard from everybody, and we have had so many perspectives on.
Sriram on the call, no?
Sriram is on as an observer. He's actually, because I'm on sabbatical, he's the faculty in charge of Heritage Center. So I had asked him to call in, but Sriram, you're welcome to speak if you would like. You know as much history of IIT Madras and everything related to IIT Madras as any of us.
No, I'm good. I'm listening. I'm good.
Okay, I don't know if you're good, but I know you're very knowledgeable. So yeah, I should also mention that I've asked Kumaran Sadasivam and Mamta Dash, who are with the Heritage Center, to call in and be observers as well. So yeah, now that we have kind of heard each other, I want to do maybe one more round and ask people to comment on anything that they might have missed, that maybe what somebody else said has jogged some memory of theirs. So I know that Raman has to leave also early. So why don't we start with Raman? Do you have anything to add to what you said earlier?
Yeah, just a comment on what Alamelu said. I think maybe the next few minutes, perhaps we should also discuss about some ideas about the way forward from now. According to me, I think for the next 5 years, we have to correct 500-600 crores target per annum, which is a tough but achievable target. And I think this office must devote its entire energy towards achieving this number first, instead of getting digressed into anything else. That is my thought, I think. And another thing is, we have, I don't know whether Nag remembers, I think from Purdue or one of the universities in the US, one team from the team managing these alumni affairs, fundraising affairs, they visited IIT Madras. They spent 2 days here.
That's from Yale, my other alma mater.
Yale. Yeah, from Yale they came. About 10-15 of them came.
Yeah.
And I remember I attended a whole day seminar also with them. And they said that they have 250 people and counting some, mind-boggling numbers and so on. So at the time I asked the head of that institution, do you do anything else apart from fundraising. He knows, he said, no single-minded goal. This is big enough, boss. Don't get digressed. So that is, one of the things he mentioned. I still remember that. And I think that's a good word of advice to follow.
It is a wonderful experience to see ACT evolve and transform over the years. It's so nice to see ACT take on bigger responsibilities and widen its horizon. Fundraising is a good example. About 10 years ago, the Institute realized the importance of alumni funding. A small team was formed, headed by the Dean of Alumni, supported by a small staff, and rupees 10 crores was raised in a year. Subsequently, CSR was introduced, in enhancing the scope of fundraising and fundraising tremendously. Soon, the requirement for infrastructure shot up tremendously. At this juncture, ACT stepped in a big way, and today the IIT Madras raises hundreds of crores of rupees thanks to the solid infrastructure provided by ACT. PAL's Pan-IIT Alumni Leadership Series is another instance where ACT has played a leading role. Again, this organization started in a small way, helping Tier 1 and Tier 2 engineering colleges enhance their potential. Soon, this organization grew, involving more colleges in more cities. Again, the demands for running the organization increased. Here again, ACT stepped in and played a role of a supporting organization. It is wonderful to see ACT increase its responsibilities and activities by leaps and bounds.
Yeah. Also, I think one thing I do want to mention, that delegation that came were all graduate alumni. It was called the Yale Gale, Graduate Alumni Leadership Exchange, which it's an indicator that Yale, even though it's predominantly regarded as an undergraduate college, like in the past, IIT Madras, does give a lot of importance to graduate alumni as well. So I know that we are already taking many steps in this regard, but this could be something that I don't know, ACT could also play a major role in terms of assisting the Office of ACR and IIT Mana to make happen. Because I do think that getting more graduate students into the alumni mix is always something that we should strive for. And DC, would you like to add anything?
Nothing much to add, except I endorse Raman's view that till our fundraising activities are planned to meet the targets, we should not be looking at other activities. We should focus on that.
Okay, that's a very clear message. Chris?
Yeah. So, as I was reflecting, what has come across very clearly to me is that this culture of working together seamlessly, regardless of which organization we belong, but with the single purpose of the alma mater must benefit in whatever we do. I think this culture must be sustained, and that must become the culture of all the alumni organizations, and we need to keep reinforcing that continuously. Second, we've never thought about who gets the credit. We have worked very seamlessly. I think that must continue. I think that is also important. Thinking about the future, I think we need to now think about because the scale is going to change, right? So we need to think about how do we kind of rework the targets such that we know exactly how much from alumni, how much from philanthropy, how much from corporate clients, corporate donors. I think we need to look at that, and corporate donors are going to play an even bigger role because there is pressure from government now for industry to spend a lot more on R&D and work with academic institutions. I think we need to leverage that. And we need to start thinking about how IIT Madras could be the first one to get significant overseas funding from corporates. I think that's again an opportunity for us to see. We have always led from the front. We've not, looked at what others are doing in India. We have always led from the front, and I think we need to think about which are the new frontiers that we need to cross, and we need to figure that out. We have figured it out till now, and done a good job. So we need to now figure these out and take these forward.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Professor Anand, any thoughts?
No, actually, I don't have anything to add. You guys are doing a professional job. This small, in my time, it's grown considerably. So let me just wish you all the best. I don't have anything particular to add.
Professor Bhaskar?
The other thing, the only other thing I would like to add is that while we are doing all this and pushing the boundaries in trying to grow our fundraising and learn new ways of doing it, proper ways of doing it, and so on, and I'm sure we will continue this. And as was pointed out, this should be the single-minded main focus of the trust. That there's no doubt about it. But the one thing that is really, Chris has pointed out some of the things that have really helped us. The fact that we work seamlessly. We have even with the institute and other alumni arms. Also, that nobody was worried about credit. All that is, I think those things are very important. But one more thing is, and I've personally have had the comfort of this from the entire 10 years I was director, is that the integrity quotient in our trust is very high, extremely high. And I think that should continue above all. If you have to choose between that quotient, I'm not saying lack of integrity, choose between that quotient and maybe something else that may bring some value to our goal. I would rather not go for any lowering of the integrity quotient. I mean, really, right now, the entire period I was director, and I think Professor Anand will also aware to this, that we didn't have to worry about any decision that the trust would take. We knew it would be even more carefully taken than we would do it ourselves. I mean, that's the way that I've been in trust meetings. I've seen the way Chris has handled as chairman. I've seen the way, other office bearers like DC and now Alamelo and all look at it. And even Shankar who's coming. I think the focus on, above all, being on the straight and narrow path, that is very important. And that's very important. I think that gives the credibility, that gives to donors above anybody else. Donors don't want to give money unless it's squeaky clean. So this is something that we should, I think is very, very important brand value of this trust. We should not lose it.
Yeah, thanks. Satya?
Yeah, just a couple of points. Earlier it was thought that most of the money will come from the US alumni, and a lot of the focus was on how do we get attract US alumni. But I realized there's a lot of this thing in the Indian alumni also, and Chris has really led the way there, and I think we should go after the Indian alumni now. With all this unicorns coming up and all that, there's going to be a lot more wealth that's going to be created here, and also the people in India are looking at paying back. That this is something that was a cultural or a shift that had to happen. The second thing is how we treat our small donors, because these are potential big donors later on. I think even a person giving 50,000 rupees should be, we should treat them the thing and keep them updated where that money went. And one of the most important things I learned very early is, as pointed out by others also, is the alumni would like to see where that money went. Okay, not into some big ocean which is taking care of the institute's babus and these kinds of stuff. But because I heard this from quite some alumni in the beginning, saying, I gave this money, I don't know what happened to it, where it went. I'm sure it's put to good use. The institute has this thing, but just would like to know where it went. So I think that kind of feedback mechanism, taking care of even the small donors, and it's very important. And I think it's going great guns, and let's keep it going.
Yeah, thanks, Satya. Mahesh, you want to add anything?
Not really. I just want to say one thing, that I agree that while fundraising has been the single point focus of this organization, I think there are activities that other arms of ACT can take up that are charitable in nature, that will align with what, like Alamelu mentioned, that would align with things that IIT cannot do on its own. PALS is a classic example, as Professor Bhaskar pointed out. Professor Kamakoti is now very passionate about rural education, school education, using IIT resources as much as we can. Bring them some flavor of data science. So that's not something that IIT is directly able to execute. So there could be some activities, but we don't want to distract the development office to be doing those. That should be single pointed, focused on one activity. We could create other arms inside ACT potentially moving forward to take along these kinds of activities as dictated and as sort of directed by the trustee board. The last point I want to wrap up with is that we are, as others also have mentioned, an example for the country to learn from. Every week I get at least one question from one of my counterparts at the other 23 IITs asking, hey, can you send me this Gazette notification on how we are exempt from FCRA? Or what do you do with a donor who says, I want to give, but I want to control? So there is a need to write an alumni relations manual for the country at large. I see that as a way by which we can really provide a service to the country, because tomorrow, not just the 23 IITs, but I wish every NIT, every university with a reputable alumni network, a Jadavpur and Anna University, AC Tech, every one of these universities should build a strong alumni fundraising operation. And I think we have an opportunity to step in as a trust to fill that gap and serve as that knowledge repository. Those are two thoughts that come to my mind as we move forward.
Yeah, thanks, Mahesh. Alamelu, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I have inherited a great legacy, and I think we must be carrying it forward in the days to come, in the years to come, in the decades to come. Nothing more than that.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. I don't want to.
Can I? One task we probably need to think about very quickly is the sustainability of the leadership in Alumni Charitable Trust. Leadership success and planning, etc. Something we need to start thinking about. We discussed it some time back, but we didn't do anything about it. Especially Bhaskar was saying, we need people with the highest integrity. So we need to put some effort into doing this and making sure that we make that happen sooner than later.
Okay. So thanks to everyone for participating today. I think hopefully the people who watch this recording will get a pretty good idea about the Alumni Charitable Trust and its history, and also quite a bit about its outlook going forward, which really was the purpose of this recording. So I want to thank Alamelu for organizing the whole thing. I want to thank again Kannan Krishnamurthy for providing all the AV support, and of course the Heritage Center people, Kumaran, Mamta, and Professor Sriram for calling in today and as observers. I think for me, it's been a walk through memory lane, and it's been fascinating to hear so many different perspectives from so many people, but I don't think there was too much of diversity of views or of opinions. I don't think there are too many things that we are going to have to edit out later before we put this up for public viewing. So that's good. And again, shows that, we have learned to kind of work together seamlessly over the years, and that's reflected in the success of the Alumni Charitable Trust and, of course, various other activities that we have embarked upon. So thanks again, and have a good evening, everyone. Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Nat.
Bye.
Thank you all.